It's almost time. It's time to start celebrating. Stay away from the pumpkin spice. I'm just saying. But have a great Halloween.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. This is the Beyond the Mouse podcast, the podcast for all things Disney for NPR Illinois Community Voices and for the For Our Network. I'm your host today, Craig, joined by my co-host, Miss Vanessa Ferguson.
Hello.
And Mr. Brett Rutherford.
Hello there.
It is so nice to speak to the two of you. It is also very nice to get to talk to Mr. Ken Page. I'm really excited for you to hear this interview. It's going to be a lot of fun. Ken is someone that is local truly to the Midwest. He's from St. Louis and then made his career on Broadway. And then, of course, he is Mr. Oogie Boogie from The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is something that we're definitely going to talk about in the interview, and just excited about this opportunity today. So, Vanessa, you met Ken Page. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So he played and performed at the Hoagland Center for the Arts for one of the galas. And when I met him, I walked up to him with my Oogie Boogie doll and said something like, "Hello, Mr. Ken Page. I'm such a big fan at Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party. You start off Hallowishes by saying, well, what have we here? A trick-or-treater, huh? Ooh, I'm really scared." And I think he got a kick out of me doing my impersonation of him to him. And he was so delightful. He was so sweet. We got pictures together. I think he gave me a little kiss on the cheek. He's just so nice. And I'm really excited that everyone else gets to see how wonderful he is today.
I really appreciate that you called him Mr. Ken Page. So, Mr. Brett Rutherford, tell me, are you excited?
Oh, I am very excited because not only the Disney connection, but the theater connection. And he has a resume that is just amazing. I mean, amazing.
You love Ain't Misbehavin, right?
I love Ain't Misbehavin. I remember watching it as a mere child. Well, sort of.
And he is old Deuteronomy.
Which is so, I mean, Cats just became such an iconic show of the 80s, but now I think we kind of take it for granted, but believe me, it's the deal. It was the deal. And he talks about being cast in that and in the New York cast, and amazing. So I just can't wait for you all to hear about all of his career, because we talked about it all.
And this interview provided us with like the best screenshot of somebody talking to us we've ever had. So certainly it's like the best, because Ken Page he has this energy about him. And it was just such a fun conversation that we were able to have, and excited to be able to share that with you. Of course, we know that there are a lot of Nightmare Before Christmas fans out there, which is also why this is almost kind of an introduction to our next week's episode, where we will be talking Nightmare Before Christmas with the ladies of I Think You're Gonna Like This podcast. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for you to hear this interview. Let's get to it with Ken Page. We are so thrilled to welcome to the show Ken Page, and we actually have so many great questions here that we want to get you through, and I know Vanessa's going to start us off. I will say we want to talk about the breadth of your career, but of course your legendary role at this point is Oogie Boogie, since we are a Disney podcast. But Vanessa, you have our first question.
Yes. Well, like Craig said, you are the voice of Oogie Boogie. So can you tell us about when you first got that call to be the voice, and just what that was experienced like recording?
Well, first of all, the call, oddly, I would say more than to do the voice, the call was to come in and meet with them. And it's funny because Danny Elfman and I share a lawyer. So that's kind of how we got connected. And they had called him and said that they were looking for somebody who was Cab Calloway-esque, Fats Waller-esque, And he said, "Have I got the person for you?" So, and as I remember now, I went up to San Francisco to Skellington Studios, and to be honest with you, and Chris Sarandon and I laugh about this, I said, I don't remember auditioning. I just remember going up and doing it, I said, and maybe I, tricked my brain at this point and don't remember, but at any rate, I remember being there and them asking me, what's your take on what you think the character would be? They showed me the storyboard and so on and so forth. I said, well, I think it's somewhere between the voice of the demon in The Exorcist, which they went, oh, okay. And the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that's perfect.
And they said, okay. I said, and with a little New Orleans thrown on top of it. They went, that sounds right. They were just as weird as I was, you know what I mean? So I said, if I go too far in any direction, just tell me, and I'll move it this way, move it that way. So I kind of took that take on it. And of course, when you record, we did it alone, each person. I think Chris and Catherine got to do a day together or something like that, but no one was there but me. Which, footnote, it's a miracle how they put these things together so that it sounds like you're actually talking to people. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but at any rate. And of course, you do several takes of any line and they give you, different variations to take and so forth. And you do it all, you put it down and you leave. And the next thing you do is you go see the movie and there you are with a performance that you don't know how it really happened. It's all you and it's everything you put into it. But they actually, when they say directing, that's why we give Henry Selick so much credit, to make the choices of what is the best interpretation of the line or the scene per line, per scene, is really, I think, a lot of hard work. And I think for it to come off like it did, he had to do a lot of really fine tuning listening. Because I remember sometime doing 12 takes of a line, just all different kinds of ways and everything. And you don't know what's going to end up in the film. You just know it'll be you, whatever it is, right? But it was great fun recording it.
That's so fantastic. And of course, we've all lived through the cultural phenomenon that is Nightmare Before Christmas. It has such a huge, almost like cult-like following at this point. But you,
I was just going to say, I would say, and in the best sense of cult, it is. I mean, I wasn't aware, the movie came out, it did well enough, but it wasn't a huge hit, And I do remember the excitement of it opening. I was in New York and they opened it at Lincoln Center, and it was just beautiful and gorgeous and everything. But you go to the opening, the movie comes out, people go see it, you sort of forget about it. And I was doing a show, a three-penny opera in LA, and there was this young man who was on the crew of the show, sort of goth, And he said to me, he says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "I think so." He said, "Is it true that you're the voice of Oogie Boogie Man?" I said, "Yes, I am." "Oh, that blows my mind." And he went through this whole thing. And he told me about how at this club that he went to, this goth club, every Saturday night, at the end of the night, they knew the night was ending because they would hear, bum, 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 and everybody would sing along. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "Oh, man, you don't know that Nightmare Before Christmas is like this big thing." I had no idea of the underground swell that had happened with it, the cult, if you will. And that's when I sort of got cued into it. I thought, well, what's happening? And then I started asking questions and found out that there was this big following that at that time, which was some years ago, was sort of just really beginning to happen and so on and so forth. And not too long after that, I got an invitation to go to Japan and do a personal appearance. And I went to a store there, a jewelry store. Every piece of jewelry in the store, we're talking silver, we're not talking plastic, was Nightmare Before Christmas things. And I thought, what the hell's happening? I mean, it was really amazing. Of course, this since that time is like almost 20 some years later. And it's unbelievable to me. I call it the gift that keeps on giving because it just keeps going. I mean, right now in LA, the park, Disney Park, has reopened and they're rerunning. 2 seasons ago, I did the voicing for the whole, you probably know that, the Oogie Boogie Bash and all this other stuff. And they're redoing it this year. So the commercials are running and it just keeps going and it just keeps happening and it just gets bigger because by generation now, we're almost 3 generations in, right? And people, when I do signings, people come and they're adult people with their 10-year-olds. Some of them are adult people with their 10-year-olds and their 7-year-olds, babies. And it just keeps going and keeps going. It's amazing. It's really a phenomenon. I would say more than a cult, it's a phenomenon.
Sure, yes, yeah. And to that point, I have a 5-year-old, and one of his favorites is Nightmare Before Christmas. And I told him that I'd be speaking with you today, and I was excited for this interview. He was on cloud 9 about it. So,
oh my goodness,
so thank you for that. And it's just so cool to see that generation keep going.
It is.
And speaking of fans, we let our listeners know that we'd be speaking to you. And so some of them came up with some questions that they'd like to ask, and we thought we'd throw them in here randomly. Sure. But one of them, I believe it was John, asked just who your favorite Disney villain is.
Oogie Boogie, don't be ridiculous. Don't be ridiculous. Perfect. Well, let's say previous to Nightmare Before Christmas. My favorite Disney villain, I think, was Maleficent. Because I think as a kid, that scared me more than any of the others, that I remember encountering. Maleficent was really evil. There was no redeeming qualities. She wasn't funny. She wasn't trying to be funny. She was evil, And I remembered something about her always kind of made me go, ha, uh-oh, Here she is, right? And I would say that was probably I can't think of anybody else that it comes to mind that was very frightening to me from Disney. Villains.
Absolutely. Brett, I believe you have our next question.
Well, if we're moving from Disney for just a moment, because yes, we are Beyond the Mouse, but we are also big theater fans. I mean, we're theater geeks, seriously. So it is such an honor. Yeah, it's such an honor to speak with you. I'm a big fan. But so at age 21, you made your Broadway debut in The Wiz as the Lion.
Actually, it's so strange how that has happened through, I don't know why and how, but somewhere in all the IMDb's and different things, they have me making my Broadway debut in The Wiz, which I did not. My Broadway debut was in Guys and Dolls. The all-black production, yes, all-black production, which was 1976. The Wiz opened on Broadway in 1975, and I went into the show, I think, late 1976.
Okay. Well, thank you for setting that straight.
Yeah, and I keep trying to fix it, and it just keeps coming back up. So I said, they just want that to be my my Broadway debut, but it wasn't. So really? I constantly.
Well, that was. I mean, even that was such a splash. Well, what was your opening night on Broadway like? And what was it like going from St. Louis? I mean, we're talking to a Midwesterner. We're thrilled. We're honored. It's so cool to.
Well, I'm just across the river from you. I'm in St. Louis.
It's like just down the street. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a long story, of course, about coming from St. Louis and all that. But opening night of Guys and Dolls, it's hard to remember it all because it's like you feel like you're Cinderella at the ball or Cinderella. Cinderella at the ball, because you get there and it's happening and you're present, you do the performance, you go to the opening night party, which I say in my show, page by page, plug, that it was held at Gallagher's Steakhouse, which is right across from 52nd, I think, street from the Broadway Theater. And there were big pieces of meat hanging in the windows. Of course, it's Gallagher's Steakhouse. And I thought maybe that has something to do with Broadway, steaks and meat and everything. I had no idea it was just the place. But I can tell you, particularly your first Broadway show, there is nothing to compare. And it's any opening, but certainly your first one. There's nothing to compare with the thrill and the excitement of a Broadway opening night audience. Now you have your own experience on the cast side. You're running around and notes and flowers and gifts and the excitement of knowing this is it and you're going to be reviewed now and all those things. But the excitement that comes to you from the audience is amazing. Especially with Guys and Dolls, it was, certainly a show that everybody knew and blah, 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 blah. But for me, I was 21, as you said, years old, and it was my first Broadway show. And it was a show that I knew very well. So it didn't have that feeling of, is the show going to make it? I mean, is the show going to run? Might have been a question, but the show was already certainly in the annals of musical theater history already. And I just remembered feeling like everything I had imagined up to that point had actually come true. Because I was a theater, if you say geek kid, I listened to Broadway cast albums and all the things you hear everybody say about all that. But so to actually be on Broadway and not thinking of Broadway or dreaming of Broadway or imagining Broadway, to actually be on Broadway at the Broadway Theater, which was couldn't have been any more right.
Yeah.
It was pretty amazing, and unforgettable.
Ah, that is so good, dude. That's good to know. You know, it's all of our dreams.
Yeah,
so we
well, it
can
was
do it
mine.
vicariously through you. So now,
Well, it
thank
was
you for
my
that.
dream. Like I said, you know, you really imagine, watching the Tony Awards year after year and thinking, wow, what could that be like to be part of that, you know? And by the time, of course, I got there, I graduated from high school, I was in college, I was studying theater. I had done 2 seasons at the Muni and the ensemble, the St. Louis Municipal Opera, we called it back then, but the Muni. So I was indoctrinated into what the professional theater would be by that time.
Oh, sure.
And they had brought in, I want to say, at least 3 shows that season from Broadway. And people always think, no, nobody does that. I said, no, they did. Because the Muni seats 11,000 people, as you know. You're in Illinois, you know about the Muni.
Yes.
11,000 people. So when they brought people in brought shows in from New York, they could do 7 shows there, or 6, whatever, and make 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the money they'd make in a month of running on Broadway. So they actually brought shows in from Broadway. And also at the time, there was a thing that they don't do anymore. Certain times of the summer, shows would go off for a week or 2 because there was a lull in the audiences. So they would just go down for a week or 2 and everybody would take a break and a vacation, and they'd come back in the fall or the end of the summer. So that was part of how they filled that break. They would come to, and Applause came that year, Seesaw, shows that were on their way to New York. Anyway, Seesaw was the show that made me want to go to New York. More than I already did, you know, because it was all about New York and it was very hip and very all these different things. And I just remember thinking that summer, that's it. I can't stand it anymore. I gotta go.
Yeah.
And I went, and the rest, as they say, is his story.
Yes.
Right. Well, Ken, I'm so glad you shared with us what was kind of going through your mind is that you got to be on Broadway for the first time. Now I have to ask you,
Yes.
when you got the call where they said, okay, Ken, we want you to dress up like a giant cat. We're going to have all these other actors that are cats. They're going to be pawing at you. What was going through your head then?
Well, you know, that's an interesting story because it was nothing nearly that simple. I mean, Cats, as you know, was a big hit in London before it came to New York. So the excitement for the Broadway production was tremendous. I mean, they did 6 months of auditions. And I don't mean theoretically, I mean literally 6 months of auditions. Everybody went in for it that could crawl. I remember there was releases that Liza's going to play Grisabella. Then it was Cher's going to play Grisabella. Of course, this was all PR, but it kept everybody on the edge of their seats about the show. And as we know, the logo with the 2 eyes and nothing else. There was no pictures, no anything. It was absolutely intriguing for everybody, including the people auditioning. Now, I was one of those people, as I said, 6 months auditions. I didn't go in until the last week. People had been being seen and coming back for over that period of time. I went in the last week on a Monday. I came back for a callback on a Friday, and they called me on Monday morning to say, would you play Old Deuteronomy and Cats? Wow. So when I tell people, when the cast was together and I told them that, they were like, I won't say what they said. I went the first time 6 months ago and they call you in a week and you knew about it. I said, that's just the way it worked for me, you know.
Showbiz.
That's showbiz, baby,
showbiz,
you know.
Baby.
But so to get the call, of course, by the time I went in for it and got in the mix of it all, and it also dawned on me, because I hadn't really focused on it much before then. I thought, well, Cats, you know, it's all about dancers and dancing. And so I just didn't really think there was a role in it for me. And the late Bernard Jacobs, who was one of the heads of the Schubert organization, I was at the closing performance of Ain't Misbehavin on Broadway. I wasn't in it anymore, but I was there for the closing. And he asked me, he says, Kenny, have you been seen for Cats? I said, no. He says, he was kind of a little pissed because I think he felt like I should have been and I hadn't been. He said, all right, look, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to call up Benny Lipp, the casting office, and I'm going to have them bring you in. And I said, well, okay. I mean, they didn't. He says, no. I'm going to call Benny Lipp's office and have them bring you in. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So I went off actually to LA to do the TV version of Ain't Misbehavin at NBC. And while I was there doing that, I was learning the song and rehearsing. And I always like to tell it because it's so funny. My dear late friend, Amelia McQueen, we had back-to-back rooms at the hotel. And I was in the shower singing, "You've heard of several." And we'd go to the studio and she goes, "Yeah, I heard you rehearsing this morning, Paige." I said, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "Yeah, it's pretty good. You a little more work to do." I'm like, who asked you? You know,
Yeah.
but it was, I always loved that because I didn't think she could hear me, but she did. Anyway, so I was working on the song. I came back, as I said, I went to the audition, so on and so forth. And they called me, and it was that feeling like you won the lottery. It was pretty close to
Sure.
like an opening night of a show because we all knew that Cats was going to be a huge hit. It already had an advance of millions of dollars. And the whole city, the whole country was kind of talking about it because it was that rare thing in theater where it's a phenomenon beyond the theater. Only a few things do that. Chorus Line did that. Rent did that. I think Wicked to some degree. I think most recent, but anyway, you know what I mean. So it was a huge thing. It was always in the media. Everybody was talking about it. So to get the call that said you're in it, and I remember them asking me, you know, as you know, would you like to play the role of Old Deuteronomy in Cats? I thought, yeah, I will. Yeah, and it was thrilling. It was very thrilling because when I told friends that I'd been cast, I mean, everybody wanted to be in it. And even if they knew they weren't right for it or there was nothing for them in it, the idea was it was the best theater experience coming down the pike that had come down the pike in a long time. So it was pretty great. And getting that call was, yes, you know? Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's a great part. It's a great entrance. You don't have to, you know, you have a little bit of a break at the beginning, and so I think.
Well, you know, actually, I didn't have a little bit of break at the beginning.
Really?
I've done it subsequently, and I've asked, you know, every time I've done it, I said, "Look, I'm a little older than I was back in 1982." Everyone was in the opening. We were all what we called.
Okay.
We would call the tribe in the opening because you don't have on your character costumes and things.
Oh.
You're just regular everyday cats, as they say, you know.
Okay.
And Betty, myself, everybody, we were all in the opening, but nobody knew who we were yet because we hadn't been introduced by character. So I actually was in the beginning, and we did the naming of cats and all the opening number and the whole thing. And then one by one, everybody went back to the dress room. Some stayed on and went right into the, you know, show story. But we went back, and that's when I got into my Deuteronomy thing. And you're right, it's one of the best entrances ever. It truly is, you know, especially at the Winter Garden where everybody had come on stage, and my character entered from house left and came around and walked through behind the front orchestra section. So you got to see people and they got to see you. And then I had this ramp to walk up to the big greeting to all the cats. I mean, it was a terrific, next to Dolly Levi, I don't think there's
hello. Yeah. So.
too much better than that.
Brett, you had, I know in doing our research and whatnot, you really loved that Ain't Misbehavin special. You have a question about that, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, you mentioned that, and it was 1982, and yes, I watched it, and I remembered it so distinctly. I mean, I was young, and I was very white, and I was very Midwestern, and yet I'm watching this wonderful performance on NBC, on a network, you know, and well, I mean, it could be its own podcast because I love it so much, but I'll just get to it. I think what hit me most really is, you know, it's the music of Fats Waller, and it's so well written, and everyone has a moment to shine, and the end of Act 1, amazing. Well, anyway, but in Act 2, kind of in the middle, the song Black and Blue, and I mean, you know, again, I said I was, you know, very young, and you know. It really hit me, and it gave me great empathy for that moment, and you know, so that's what it did for me. But what was it like performing that?
Well, you know, I think reflecting
what that song was like.
Knowing, let me just say a little bit of the history of it. The song was actually from a show I believe called Hot Chocolates, and Louis Armstrong actually sang it originally. And it was a little more upbeat, you know, the words were always what they were, but it had a feeling of, so when they brought it in for us to learn it, to do it in the show, we all talked about how in a show that was, I think, 99.9% upbeat, other than Mean to Me and a few more heartbreak kind of things.
Right.
This was the only moment in the show where we were going to get to not only express what Fats Waller went through as a Black entertainer at that time, but also what it was like for Black people at that time, you know. And it was the only moment in the show where there was no edifice. There was no, we're going to make you laugh, we're going to have fun, we're going to be sexy, we're going to be this. It was just plain and simple. I give Arthur Faria and Richard Maltby great credit in the way they staged it. Just us sitting on the stools, singing out front to everyone. And it really, interestingly enough, when we first opened in the show, there would always be teeters of laughter when we did the number. When we did it off Broadway, because we were at the Manhattan Theater Club first, and we were in a 60-seat room, I think the energy that we were bringing forth as actors before the song started let everyone know this is not funny. But in the Broadway theater, people, of course, were more distant, and I think they thought when we went, cold empty bed, springs hard as lead, there's in my head, feel like, oh Ned, what did I do to be so black and blue? But interestingly, for me, that was exactly what the song was about. People in the time period took it to be something funny because in their mindset, it was like, there's a long story that could go with that. But as we continued the song, all of a sudden it started to dawn on the audience that what was being said was the real state of being Black in America, specifically during the Harlem Renaissance period, say the 30s to the 40s. And when we got to film it, what I loved about the way it was filmed, even though it was just the five of us, it had that sense of representation. You felt like you were seeing faces of several people, not just the five of us. And what I love, because I've directed the show now 4 times, and I always tell the cast, I said, the thing about this is 2 things. One, you're representing the 5 people that you are. Secondly, you're representing everyone from that time who experienced whatever this song is talking about, and not needless to say today. But last and most importantly, Fats Waller, who was known for his humor and his dexterity on the piano with stride and everything, this is what he really experienced. And this is the moment in the show where we let everybody know the heart of the man and what he really dealt with. And then you come back with recording artist, Fats, I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter. So well written. He always made people feel so great, but that's what he was really experiencing. Sure. Yeah. You know.
It's an amazing cast. And as you said, Armelia McQueen, who, again, another Disney reference, because you both were in
Adventures in Wonderland.
Wonderland, which is so good. I bet that was that fun?
Oh God, yes. Well,
your
look, she was like
amazing. I'm like,
my costume.
I just can't imagine.
Can we say I've been walruses and cats and but yeah. Well, first of all, I'll say this. Amelia and I did a few things together, which I didn't realize in total until her passing. But we were like brother and sister. I mean, out of Ain't Misbehavin, that's the friendship I came away with more than the others, and we all were friends and close. But Amelia was like my sister. Life went on. We stayed the way we were and did other projects together. And Adventures in Wonderland was so, because she did the whole series. I did 8 episodes. And I remember when I got on the whole costume and the whole thing, and she stood there and she looked at me, she said, well, Paige. And I said, don't say anything. Don't say anything. Because it could have been anybody. Let's face it. There was a whole prosthetic head and the whole business. But the energy of the,
Yeah.
But
the message of that story was so good too,
Oh yeah.
So well done. But yeah, thank you.
Ken, we alluded to it earlier. Brett mentioned that we are huge theater geeks. We also met doing community theater, and actually our Muni up here is Muni with an I. We have a municipal opera that seats.
Yes, I've seen that. I have seen it. I don't know how it came to me, but for some reason I looked and said, it's a mini Muni.
That's right. It's about 2,000 people. But in 2019, you were able to get the Lifetime Achievement Award from the St. Louis Muni in that beautiful stage of 11,000 people. What is it like getting that recognition, one, but then also just performing out there in that open air theater? Is there something like coming home to that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I should specify and say that the actual award came from the St. Louis Arts Council, not from the Muni. However, I can say this: there is no place, and that used to be their Muni. What do they call it? Alone in its greatness. That used to be there. But there truly isn't. The closest thing to the Muni is Radio City, which of course is indoors, or the Hollywood Bowl, which is twice the seating, but they don't do productions. Now they do sort of, concerts of shows and things. It gets pretty close, but it's still not a regular book show. I don't think there's anything else like it, really. Starlight Kansas City is close, but it has its own different set of circumstances. There used to be a Starlight in Indianapolis, which closed years ago. And they were the three outdoor. Of course, I think Casa Manana in Texas was an outdoor theater, but now it's an indoor, whatever. But the Muni, they just had their 103rd season. We just had our 103rd season. And it has gone under a complete renovation. It's stunning. I mean, what they've done simply is they prepared it for the next 103 years. Everything there worked and it was fine, but production values and things have changed so much over the years that there were certain things that you would see in a theater that the Muni could no longer produce because they didn't have the equipment, they didn't have the technology. Well, they have it all now, and it's just stunning. But to be on that stage, I mean, for me, home, yes, I started my professional career there at 18, as I said, in the ensemble. And coming back, I think in 1992, I came back to do Ain't Misbehavin, which was amazing. Paul Blake, who was the artistic director at the time, called me, he says, "Darling, we're going to do Ain't Misbehaving." I said, "You are at the Muni? It's 5 people." Yeah. He goes, "Well, we're going to try." I said, "Okay. Would you be interested at all in doing it?" And I hadn't performed there since I left in 75. And I thought, well, if I'm going to come back, this is a perfect show to come back with, Be damned that it's 5 people on the stage that's 125 feet wide. They did a great job with making it present for the audience, but at any rate, and the sound system there is so good, even though you may not have seen us, you heard us very well. But it really, and of course, since then, I've done, I think, 43 productions. Once I came back in 92, with the exception of maybe 2 summers where I was doing other things, I've been in a season every year since then. And done 2, when I was younger, I do 3 shows a season. There was 2 shows a season. Now it's 1 if I, But there's nothing else like it. And I will say this, more so than the physical and the bigness and all the other things, it really has kept the sense of family that it always had. The Muni, when you go there, and now it's almost been reborn because the younger people have really taken it to heart. I mean, doing the Muni, if you're a New York performer, doing the Muni in the summer is almost like that's what you do. You can be on Broadway, coming into the season. But if your show closes, you take a vacation or whatever you do, the Muni is like the summer camp, we call it, of Broadway now. And it really truly is. I mean, people there, they've won Tony Awards, they've done everything. It's not the sense that it used to be in the old days, which was kind of the reverse. If you were a movie star, you'd been on Broadway, you got to play the Muni because you had a status, a name, a thing. It's sort of that way, except now there's a full circle in it, that it's not considered where you go after, it's where you go during. Yeah. And so many young people that I worked with there who were in the ensemble as the years went on, they're starring on Broadway, they're in films, they're in all sorts of things. And it's a great place to have, as I call it, my theater home. Broadway is wonderful, and I absolutely, knock on wood, how fortunate am I to have it. But the Muni is always welcoming. I'm the voice of the Muni. I do the commercials. I do the announcement at the top of the show. Good evening and welcome to the blah, 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 But it really, to sum it up, it really is my theater home. And even when I reach the point where I won't be able to do shows, because it's getting fast, you know, we were going to do, we did Meet Me in St. Louis a few summers ago. And, you know, I knew that Grandpa, his bedroom was upstairs. And I calculated, I said, okay, if he's going upstairs, his bedroom, he has to go upstairs, then come down the escape stairs. When he's entering, he has to come up the escape stairs and down the, I said, you know what? Does Grandpa have a room on the first floor? Possibly. I said, maybe his bedroom is over there on the first floor. And they thought about it. They were like, well, you know, I said, I'm just saying, I can't go up and down, up and down, up and down. Daddy's gotten to an age where that kind of thing is not only not great, but it's not smart, you know. So they did. They gave me a room downstairs on the front floor, and they'd call Grandpa, and I'd come out from the side. I said, look, he was supposed to be a doctor in his background, and he's probably got a bedroom attached to the doctor's office that he had down there. And they were like, good backstory. I said, come on, of course. So that the physical limitations, of course, is outdoors, and it gets hot, blah, blah, blah. So you get to an age where it isn't as easy to do, you know, and you take it for granted when you're younger because you just do it and it's so much fun and blah, 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 blah. But when you start turning around a couple of bends in age, 102 degrees in the middle of the day is not probably the smartest thing to do. So my guy says, he says, I don't care if we have to bring you out in a wheelchair, we're not letting you leave. I said, that could very well be the way I'll be there. He says, that's it. He says, it's fine. We'll do Drowsy Chaperone and you'll come out in a wheelchair. I said, oh, okay.
Perfect. Well,
That's perfect.
we're glad
That's
to hear that you'll still be, that people are still wanting you to be involved.
Yes. And that is a good thing. People, they ask me every summer, this summer, they said, are you doing any shows this summer? And I said, well, I was to do Mary Poppins, which was dropped from the top of the season with COVID and everything. They took 2 shows away, so it could start later. I said, so no, I won't be. I said, but you'll hear my big mouth. I'll be announcing, you know, the things. But yes, even this past season, I was to do a show. And there's more roles I could do. You just stay age appropriate.
And maybe we will also still hear you doing some voice acting. And we have one more question about voice acting.
Sure.
Now, when we talked to Jodie Benson, she gave us some behind the scenes stories of doing Little Mermaid. Tristan, a listener, wants to know if you had any great table reads or fun behind the scenes stories of recording your part for All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Oh, All Dogs Go to Hell, loud, right? That surprised me. I thought you could say. No, it was kind of the same thing with All Dogs Go to Heaven. And that, of course, it was sort of a cameo. Well, I guess in a way it was the same thing with Nightmare Before Christmas, but there was no dialogue to that performance. It was really just the song. I had a couple of lines that led into the song. And no, I got a call from Don Bluth and Gary Goldman, you know, from the producing studio, the animator and the writers and so forth. And they said, we would like you to do this character, you know, King Gator, this opera-loving alligator, you know, which is sort of, again, when you saw the picture, I went, oh, okay, got it. He's in the sewer and he loves opera. And Charlie's yelling because he thinks he's drowning. Ah! And my line was that an A? Wait, was that a B flat or was that an A? You know, and then we go into these like, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh, I love it. That was a great note. Let's make music together, you know, and you do the song. And funny enough, people, when Burt Reynolds passed, they said, oh, yes, you did that duet with him. I said, I did, but we never worked together. He recorded, I was told that he was intimidated because I was a musical theater person and he didn't want to, you know, whatever. And so we never actually saw each other or anything. But the lovely thing about it, as you look back on it, as of course, as it is in the film, I think the affection that I think we both really did have for each other comes across in the performance, even though we weren't in the same room at the same time at all. And there was no table read, therefore. I recorded it in LA and I just learned the song and I went in and we did a few passes on it and did a few wild lines that they could use when I got underwater, you know, and things like that. And that was it. So there wasn't any real backstage story to tell about it. I think that is the backstage story, that the song is the thing and Bert and I really were not together. And but there it is for history. We are together forever.
I love that. Now, actually, Brett has one more question about Oogie Boogie. Brett,
sure.
Can you share with us that one?
Well, sure. Well, bringing it back to Disney, because as Beyond the Mouse, we are contractually obligated to do so. Um,
As I would imagine you would be.
you know,
Yeah,
well, we do like the Disney thing.
of
Can you
course.
tell us about your experience performing Nightmare Before Christmas at the Hollywood Bowl? And was
Yes.
it like your time at the Muni? I mean, it's not
Yes.
wide, it's deep, you know?
Well, it's a funny thing because they all were like, now you got to understand the bowl is really, I'm thinking, I'm thinking to myself, I got this. I've been doing this for 20,
Yeah.
30 years.
Yes.
This is nothing. And
How
you're
many
right.
nights do we do this? We do this for, three?
Three
Oh,
nights.
sure, we
Yeah,
can do that. That's good.
I think I got it,
Yeah.
But that is the interesting thing. And first of all, I think they had done it once or twice before I joined them. Danny did it alone and with some other people. And then they decided to bring some of the other original performers into it. And we've done it, of course, I think 3 times in Hollywood Bowl, 3 different occasions. We're doing it, by the way, if anybody's going to be in LA, October 29th and 31st, Halloween night. We're going to be at the Bank of America Stadium. We're not at the Hollywood Bowl, which I'm kind of like, wow, what's that going to be like? Because the bowl has become the home, for us and so forth. And I should say, for the sake of Disney, that I also did a concert to film of Little Mermaid there a couple of years ago, which was great fun. I did Sebastian, so that was terrific. But with the bowl, kind of like the Muni too, you only see a third of what's there. The rest of those people, especially at the Hollywood Bowl, are like, they could be on Mars. You don't know. It's just like thousands of people are up there in the back and you don't even, And it wasn't until I was leaving, because even in the day when you're rehearsing, you see the seats, but it doesn't quite. And when they opened it up at night, we were leaving it, the back of the stage was open. And I stood there and I looked and I said, I had no idea. And it was sold out. So, it was packed. And I thought, look at that. It's like a wall of seats, isn't it? All the way to the top. And the bowl has such my God, the history and the traditions and the things that are part of the Hollywood Bowl. To get to go there and do it was just the best. It was yet another page in the story of Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, another iteration, and now it continues, knock on wood, all things go well, with our situation we're all dealing with. And it's just so great to get to be able to, from a film where you did a voice on soundtrack, to get up and sing it with these symphony orchestras and the great John Musari, who's our conductor. It's amazing. Every time I do it live, I think, isn't it interesting that this film thing that I did has come back around to live theater? Yeah. Still.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And as you said, for me, that's my medium. So I was like, let me at him. Oogie lives in person. That's the great thing. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah,
it's just been such a joy to get to talk to you. And now I get to go home and tell my son. I got to speak to Oogie Boogie. And
absolutely. And tell him I said boo.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. It's just also great. But what we like to end with is just a question to you. Is there something that you've done so many of these interviews? Is there something that you wish you're asked about, but you never are? Or maybe a story that you have that you've always wanted to tell, but haven't had the opportunity? So we thought we'd just give you an open stage, as it were, to,
oh my goodness.
To let us know.
Well, when I was 5, no. I can't say that there's anything specific. I would just say that at this point, I would want to say more than anything how grateful I am, and how lucky isn't a word I like to use a lot, because I think there are many other things that come in before luck. But how grateful I am that my career not only has been wonderful, but continues to be active. And I look down the pike and I see a few more things before I'm sitting on the rocking chair, And I'm so grateful that opportunities like Nightmare Before Christmas came along, because you never know. As Fats Waller, one never knows, do one, and you don't know what's in front of you. You just try to always do your best. And I'm so grateful for the opportunities that I've had, because looking back now, I can say they're all pretty hallmark things. I mean, Cats is an amazing thing that is worldwide. Ain't Misbehavin has been done all over the world and exists on film. That's one thing I would comment on, is that I've been very fortunate to put some of my stage performances on film, which is also not something that happens it happens more now than it used to, but that's been specifically wonderful. Getting to work in London, getting to work in Paris. My career has taken me to all of these. I've even worked at Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. I'm just saying, and I tell people and they go, what in the hell were you doing at Ryman Auditorium? I said, I did a show called It Ain't Nothing But the Blues, which we had done on Broadway at Lincoln Center and then at the Ambassador. And I got a call that said, they want us to do the show at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. Are you free? Because this was after we dispersed and everything. I said, yeah, how great. And I had Minnie Pearl's dressing room, and I got to take a picture with the famous microphone. So I've even been reached that far into what we know as our industry. So I'm very grateful. That's what I would say as a last statement. And I knock on wood, and I hope my health is good and that I'm able to continue doing what I do. Because I think artists, no matter what leg of it, arm of it, finger of it you're in, we have a particular mission, especially nowadays. Whenever I've spoken to graduating classes, which I've done a bit, and I always start with a whole litany. I said, just think about it. No TV, no movies, no recordings, no this, no that, no. I said, none of that exists. What is the world? No dancers, no singers, no newscasters, because they're part of the industry, no music, no Madonna, I used to say, then it was Gaga, the years went on. I said, none of that is there. What do we have? And I could see them thinking, I said, so don't ever let anyone tell you that what we do is not important. People take it for granted because it's just there. They go and they live stream or they download and everything is there to be had. But if we weren't there as artists to do it, it wouldn't exist. And I think what we do is the spirit lift of humanity, always has been. And I think that's the thing that keeps me going at this point, is knowing specifically at this time, whether it's Zoom or, whatever, that we really are the air underneath everyone that keeps us all breathing and feeling like we're one together.
Truly are. And we are so grateful for your time today and just the art, the creativity, the joy, the passion that you've put out into the world and continue to put out into the world. We are such recipients of that. So thank you so much for your time today.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for asking those wonderful questions. Thank you particularly for that. That's very astute. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. But it was so wonderful getting to talk to you today. So
it was great to talk to you. I mean, look, this is a thing that's come out of the COVID period, which I think is, if you want to say kind of wonderful, I don't know if that's the right word.
I know.
I was saying to my mother just before, I said, well, I got to go because I got to do a Zoom link and thing. And I said, I never thought about it. But since last year, I've done several different things and that I've reached more people during this time because of everything being online and people being able to come on, stream in, or whatever, that I've reached so many people during this period. And they've been things like this where you get to talk and you get to express yourself. And I don't have to perform. I'm actually talking to people. And it's been sort of an interesting page by page.
Yeah. Now that's a podcast.
That's
See?
a podcast right there.
See, there
Right
you
there.
are.
No, that's
That's by the way, that's the name of my show, my concert that I did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but aptly named, I think,
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, that's so
Yes.
wonderful. And
Wow.
thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
you so
again.
much.
And
You're
we
more
really,
than
really
welcome.
appreciate
And
it.
everybody stay
Thank you.
safe, stay healthy,
You too.
and have a
please.
great Halloween. Come on.
Absolutely.
It's almost time. It's time to start celebrating. Stay away from the pumpkin spice. I'm just saying. But have a great Halloween.
That's so great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Too.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
What an absolutely charming man. And Vanessa, I know you had some wonderful questions for him. That's just awesome that you were able to bring those to him. And it's cool that he remembered the Springfield Muni. How neat is that? And of course, he's performed in this area. And you could tell that he really has a love for St. Louis and that the St. Louis Muni means so much to him. Think about all the time that he come back. He's the voice of the St. Louis Muni and their promotions. Just incredible stuff in addition to this so memorable role as Oogie Boogie in Nightmare Before Christmas. It's just great isn't it, Vanessa?
It is so great. I am so glad that you all enjoyed speaking to him, because he was so memorable when I met him the first time. He's just a delightful person. And that voice, I mean, even his talking voice is just like, I don't know, it gives such energy. And it's like my favorite part of Nightmare Before Christmas is just him, his voice, his singing voice. He's just so delightful. And I'm so glad you guys got to meet him. Yay.
I know, it was just so exciting and fun to get to talk to him and to get to hear really about a lot of his career. Brett, I know you really wanted to talk about some of his Broadway shows, and he gave you a big scoop about that, right? Did you enjoy it?
It was great. It was so great. And the other thing is, it was talking to another artist who's giving us kind of like life lessons, you know, I mean, kind of philosophies about the times that we've been through and all of that. And just a wonderful giving person. So it was so great to talk to him. So thank you, Ken Page. You're the best.
Thank you, Ken Page, and thank you for
Ken Page.
Mr. Ken Page
He's
coming.
Mr. Ken Page
Coming to us
me.
from about 90 minutes away in St. Louis. So it's so great to get to talk to him for sure. If you are out there thinking, where else can I get great life musings from Brett Rutherford? It's on Beyond the Mouse podcast. So we have a lot of former interviews that we did, past interviews rather, and we also have some great conversations amongst the three of us. If this is the first time you're listening, please be sure to go back and listen to a lot of our other shows. You can search those by just finding Beyond the Mouse on any podcast platform. You can also find us on social media. So we are on Instagram, Beyond the Mouse Pod. We are also on Twitter, Beyond Mouse, and then also on Facebook, Beyond the Mouse Podcast, or the Beyond the Mouse Podcast Pals Facebook group, which we really encourage you to join because we are in there. We're having great conversations. Our guests for next week, which is the ladies from Like This Pod, they're in that group as well. So you can chat with them, all things Nightmare Before Christmas. Like I said, this is kind of like a precursor episode. So be sure to come back for a spooky good time next week as we talk Nightmare Before Christmas. I'm just really excited for the conversation that we got to have today and glad that you all came along with us. So for Beyond the Mouse, I am Craig.
I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Brett.
And we will see you real soon in the front row.
So spooky.
So spooky. That's all I know how to do.
I got nothing.
Like I don't have anything else except for it's spooky.
That was good. That was good.